Great, it's Monday, the 24th of April, 2023. Now, this is a very odd one, a bit of an oddball. We're only doing a one-day quest, as it were, so it's got no number applied to it. But it seemed right to come here to Biggleswade, to the Church of St Andrew. Now, we all know about St Andrew, we all know about the history of St Andrew, the saltire cross, the fact that he didn't want to be crucified in the same way as Jesus himself. I'll spare you all that part for a moment. What I won't spare you is the beauty of this church. It is absolutely amazing. It's very well kept. It's considering it had a fire not that many years ago and was obviously rebuilt and what have you, and had lots of work redone to it. If we go back to the original part of the church, we're really talking about the year 1163 AD, obviously. So 1163. Where the Bishop, Robert de Chesney, was made a royal peculiar, as they call it. And this was purely because, under the Bishop of Lincoln, to help with its restorations, its works and things. But the church goes back beyond that time. We know that most churches are built on much more sacred ground going back in time. We also know that it was around in the Norman Conquest. We know that there was a chapel here back in the 900s. So when we look at these things always, we're standing on history, really, I guess, and we're certainly living it as we travel around. Look at this, isn't it beautiful? Just to show you this. It's slightly out of character for the year of the church, but it's absolutely beautiful. I love all the little designs on it, all the intricacies. Yes, it's had some works done on it over the years, as it were. Now, what's really interesting is on the 18th of November 1200 AD, there was a miracle in this very place, in this said part of the church here. That's why I'm standing here. And apparently, at the time, the Bishop of Lincoln, who was Hugh, he died in London and his body rested at Biggleswade on the way to Lincoln. So it stayed here for a resting time. It's alleged that a woman with a broken arm touched his body, and it's reported that she was healed. But the wax tapers in the procession stayed alight. And we know that St Hugh was canonised in the year 1220, but none of the present building dates back to that period. But this is the part, the oldest part. This is the part where he would have been in rest. So it's of quite good interest there. We also know that the church had great significance and interest of the Woodchurch family. Now, which ironically, they're not actually here in the area, but you've got the Barnetts, you've got the Harriets, you've got the Middleton. Now, the Middleton is quite interesting because the Middleton outside, there's an actual section that's a gravestone, a tomb for Middleton, the family. Now, as we know, the Middleton family are very much connected into the Staindrop Church, which is connected to the Neville family. The Neville family use the saltire cross as the main point of their shield, but obviously the colour changing to red and white, especially when we go into the Nevilles of Westmoreland. But we also know that the Woodchurch surname family from Woodchurch in Kent also come into the fold, come into the mix. When they come into the mix, they come into the mix here at Biggleswade, which is quite fascinating. Because we know that only another 200-300 years down the ancestral path, the Woodchurch would become the Clarke, and the Clarke would become the Clarke. So therefore we have the Middletons and Nevilles, the Clarkes and the Fordhams actually, all embedding themselves into one specific area, but of no actual connection to this area. But what was that connection? There must have been a connection. Let me show you that. It's a beautiful church, very well kept. When we first arrived, the alarms were going off, which was a little bit alarming. Excuse the thunder. A little bit alarming. But thank God someone came along and saved the day and turned the wretched alarms off. Here, look at this. And this is what I'm talking about, the saltire cross. And we look at the St Andrew himself. We know far too much about St Andrew. I've talked about him, so I'm probably blue in the teeth. Beautiful saltire cross. And then we just go around to the next one, to here. 3 crowns, lovely, absolutely nice. But what's of real interest, I'm not overly particularly interested in that part there. What I'm really interested in is this particular symbology here of the sword and the crown, knightly virtues. We know that the Templars are very much in this area, going from here, as the crow flies right up to Elsworth. So crossing the current borders into Cambridgeshire. So certainly a Templar aspect there as well. But of course there'd be a Templar aspect if there was a Neville aspect. We know that for sure. So, and I just love that everything's got the beautiful little detail of the Sortai cross, the St Andrew's cross. What's of particular interest in the Church of St Andrew in Biggleswade, where we are, is this beauty, and I just think it's absolutely wonderful. I like the fact that we see St Alban as well. And the words, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. I mean, that's quite interesting. We don't often see those particular, or hear those particular words, dwelt among us. So that's quite nice. Again, there's already so many pictures in any story of any artwork that the artist portrays, if anyone looks close enough really to see it. We can certainly see the white roses up here. Look, you see on the right top right hand side around about your 2 o'clock in the frame mix there. Some nice tulips to the side. But what's of particular interest is if we come down, we can see the lion there and how the lion is there. And we can see the Lamb of God in there. But the Lamb of God this time, on that central piece down, third window across, Lamb of God. It almost looks like a bull, doesn't it? So is it a bull or is it a lamb? I like the Alpha to Omega on the little book to the left-hand side of the preacher there. You can see the little Alpha to Omega parts there on the particular thing. We've got the usual inverting dove coming down, dove of heaven, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty typical. But what's not so typical of seeing in this picture is a picture within a picture. Because if we look at the lower frame here, you can see the temple in the background there. See, so you've got the lady there with the staff, with the rod. You could say, is that Jacob's ladder? Not overly convinced. Is it just the rays of the sun beaming down? Quite possibly. But look behind. Forget the rest of it. Just look behind and see what's there. And there's a story within a story in these artworks. There always is. We have the black and white of innocence to remind mankind that humans still have some form of innocence. We know that the Freemason used black and white strips on their floor within the lodges for that particular reason. So they'll say it's for something totally different. Well, that'd be that's just a mask, really. The fact remains that the black and white is to remind of good and evil and the fact that humans still have some form of innocence within them, it is thought. Excuse me. As we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten, of the Father, begotten of the Father. So it says 1,000 words in there if we look very carefully. We can actually see that, it's a very interesting piece. I like the way the hands are held, like the way St Alban is in there. When we come along to here, this is a little beauty here. I absolutely love it. You've got the Agnus Dei. What an excellent organisation. We've got the Kiru. Some people say Chiru, I say Kiru. If we look at its original pronunciation in translation, it's Kiru. Kiru. But some people say Chiru, potato. But we've got the symbology there of the disc, the Kiru, going into the San Grail, into the Grail, into the chalice. Sun behind, shining through. Nice, really nice piece there. I love the way it's gilded around the sides there. Really beautiful. Beautiful piece of work. Okay, let's just go up here. You've got the wonderful Biggleswade St Andrew again, Alpha to Omega. We've got the lovely Madonna. That almost looks like not Mary and Jesus. I almost think that's actually someone holding the Black Madonna, actually, because it doesn't look like Jesus to me. It could be, who knows? There's different representations, but it's absolutely lovely. Again, Sortai across behind, like that. So here we already seen the connections between Middleton to Clarke, to Neville, to Fordham, all sort of descending or ascending from different points, as it were. The company is quite interesting. So, again here, if we just look at this, I don't know how much you can see of this particular part here, how much you can really get on there, actually, the way if you notice the way the salutations are made in many pieces of stained glass art, there's always some kind of salutation being made to tell a story, as it were. and this particular one's quite of interest. Great, it's still Monday the 24th of April 2023. Who'd have thought of these quests that we've done over the years? This is just a mini one-day quest, but absolutely full-packed, really, absolutely full-packed with interesting Grail healing energy onto the connections to Germany, of all places. This little place in Elsworth, Cambridgeshire, Elsworth village, a church that's been built here, this very church, since 986 AD. How amazing is that? Not many people even know it exists. It's got great connection, this church, to my 29th great-grandfather, Knight Tesceline, or Tesceline, or Tesceline, how you want to pronounce it, but Tesceline. And he was the father of the founder of Knights Templar. Now you think, well, where are we getting the connection from? We've got Dijon in France coming into Elsworth in Cambridgeshire. We've got Dortmund. I didn't mention Dortmund yet, but there is a Dortmund connection. There is a brass dish, whether they've still got it or not, that is actually was gifted from Germany in its original days. But let me show you around the church. In the current time, it's a 14th century church now. But its original church bearings were, as I say, 986 AD. Let's just take it along here. It's just a wonderful place to be. It's got a great feel, great energy about it. Let's have a look here. I just love this. And I can see, can you see, I don't know how far you can get in there without falling over or anything, but you can see this beautiful piece of work here. Very chivalric, isn't it? Obviously it's a modern addition to the church, but it's certainly very chivalric. Very much so indeed. I just love the way its simplicity, its design, it's great. To me, it screams Germanic anyway. From an Aryan breed, I guess. I took the liberty of putting the Bible here onto page 285, just for anyone's interest. The Solomon's Prayer for Wisdom. Just that starts at the bottom there, carries on. Solomon's Prayer for Wisdom, page 285. It seemed quite fitting actually for a temple, which is what this was and still is in many respects, a temple. So it seemed quite fitting to have Solomon's aspect there, really. As we walk up here, you can see the age of it. It's obviously still well looked after indeed. I love all these little details that we can see. I don't see that on there. I'll come out with the light in a moment. But you've got the little box there where you can put the votives and candle bits. But let me just come out with the light so you can see what I'm trying to show you there. That little engravement there with the rose and just little intricate details over there that shows and bears its age. Obviously we know the Lund family was a great importance here in the village at the time. We've got on one hand over here, which my dearest friend Janice took a picture of earlier on. I just love this, Thomas Lund the apothecary. Let's go beyond that. Let's go back to this one here. The original symbols and signs there. Now we also know that later in history, King Richard III had great interest in Elsworth. So anyone who knows about King Richard III and his history. We also had the church as a great place of sanctuary back in the day. And the churches were, back in that time period. Over here we have an interesting one. We have the surgeon bearing the crest in memory of William Lund of Cambridge, surgeon, son of William Lund, Archdeacon of Huntingdon and rector of this parish. So on one side we've got a chemist, on the other side we've got a surgeon. How interesting is that? Beautiful architecture, beautiful place. I won't open this up there. We've already gone through and took some pictures already. I just want to show you this. Isn't it great? The wonderful interlinked triskelion. I love the way, I don't think anyone's ever noticed that in any other autoclaves before. We have the descending triskelion knots, but on the upper 2 points they're ascending. Yeah, almost pyramid shaped looking, I guess, in that sense. Over the back they've got some lovely little piece of artwork there, engraved, and we've got the various berries and flowers and things. And we can see as we look around, sadly, most of the actual windows have had to be replaced over the years to plain glass and modern. But let me take you down here and show you this little prize catch, which is the stained glass window down here in this side of the church, the only one remaining actually, to be fair. Let me just come down here. Look at this, I love this. And it's actually dedicated to Susan Papworth. Yeah, and I love it. You see, we see this in Masonic lines as well. See, really bear on that: faith, charity, hope. Those three bottom parts there: faith, charity, hope. That's part of a Masonic line. So it's not really part of a Masonic line because the Masons are a fairly new concept in history when we look back in time. I'm sure they'd hate me to say that, but they are. They're just such. They're a neo-organisation. There's nothing really historic about them when we go back. But then when we look at the top here, look at this, beautiful. Again, we've got the 3 crowns there. See the 3 crowns in the window? We've got the lovely flowers coming round there. When we come down, as I always say, look for the picture behind the picture. There's another picture. There's a palace behind there. Can we see the palace behind there? Now, bear in mind, this was part of the abbey at the time, so it could be representing of the abbey, I guess. I love the fact that he's holding his staff there. I love the fact that we've got the 3 children. And look how they're gazing. Look what colour robes they're wearing. What is the artist trying to tell you? You've got the 1 child baby in the arms and the 3 children down below. And then we've got on this side, we've got the book closed and the book open. And then look at this strange object they're holding. Why on God's green earth are they holding a wonderful anchor? You see this, the anchor in the picture. I just found that rather interesting to have and see. Is it more emblematical in the sense that people are balanced and settled when they're here? That could be true. Or is there something more to the story? Well, I'm going to say there's something much more to the story as to why there's an anchor there and the rope curled around it, which is quite interesting if everyone gets a chance. Okay, so on here we can see we've got these lovely, we see these a lot in churches, especially older churches, the style here coming round. It almost reminds me of the Anubis boat, you know, the boat going out across the sea, taking the dead with him. You know, almost like that sort of aspect. It's not obviously, it's kings and queens, and lords and ladies, and people of importance, but it always has that feel about it, that it should be something like that. I love this. Again, it's had a few knocks and bangs in its time, as we can see, and a few little repairs are on the way for good measure. But it's just beautiful to see it, really. So we can see that this is a little plaque here, and you'll see this is quite interesting. It's bequeathed the sum of £100 to the rector of and church wardens of Elsworth for his time being, to be invested in the public funds and the interest yearly of others. So Robert Whitechurch, Elizabeth Whitechurch, the widow and the relief of Robert Whitechurch. So November the 9th, 1854. Please note that on some of the older style English. Please note that. We're seeing November the 9th, 1854, not the 9th of November, 1854, as we write it today. So, whereas the American side of English, they still write it November the 9th, they put the month first before the day. And we can see this here, and on some of the older styles, we do see the month before the day. Quite fascinating, isn't it? So why was that suddenly changed? Again, that's another interesting topic, that probably not for today. See, November the 9th, not the 9th of November. Quite fascinating. And this one's just lovely. We can see this. We can see the benefactors again. Thomas. See that Campion? Yep. Gave 6 shillings and 8pence to the poor of Elsworth to be paid, on a Sunday. So he gave a nice little generous donation to the children of the area. In fact, there was a Sunday school, Christian school that set up here in Elsworth back in the day in history. Again, that's got quite some interesting points. Just as Janice pointed out to me earlier on when we were having conversation, I do like this. It's a newish edition. It's way beyond we're looking at 14th century really. So, but it's still really nice. As Jen said, it almost looks like a temple. Well, it's meant to be, isn't it? Meant to be, look, we can see it's almost like temple looking with the pillars. It's got 4 pillars, 2 pillars each side, which is quite fascinating. All in all, I say Elsworth Church is a nice little church. It's certainly peaceful, well kept, very tidy. Connected to my 29th great grandfather on the Clarke side. So, and we know that the Clarke side of the Templar side, that is the Knights Templar side. We know that there was the Lord and the Lady side, and the Clarks were the Templars. Just show you this little one as well. I just find that quite interesting here as well. On this little bench here, it says Elsworth. I just love this little symbology here on here, how they've all sort of embedded that in. It's quite interesting, isn't it? How we can see all that embedded in there. Quite fascinating. So there's a lot of things about the church that have a good feel about it. I think probably do a lot more restoration in the years to come, if it ever gets that. But certainly worth a visit here to Elsworth in Cambridgeshire.